Overseas, in a clear indication that China will not be loosening its tight COVID-19 restrictions anytime soon, the National Health Commission says the country will continue with more mass tests and targeted lockdowns as it's trying to, quote, run faster than the virus. According to the Commission at a press conference today, China's dynamic zero-COVID policy has been successful and is the best choice to maintain social and economic development. Officials quick to also stress that dynamic zero does not mean zero infections. Rather, the essence of this approach is early detection and quick response measures to stop the continuous spread of the virus. Here to take this further is the Straits Times' China correspondent Danson Cheong, who attended today's press conference in Beijing. So Danson, did the National Health Commission address the ongoing issues as more Chinese cities see COVID-19 flare-ups?
Thanks, Olivia. You know what they did? They talked about how there were issues, with getting medical help in cities like Shanghai, and also how the lockdowns have stop people from getting reliable access to food and basic necessities. They outline, some measures like making sure that even, if cities come under lockdown, there should be a flow of essential personnel like medical workers, logistics, delivery riders and drivers and so forth. But I think what was really, what stood out for me this morning was the fact that, it was really, despite this public unhappiness towards this zero COVID policy, it really was a really full-throated defense, so to speak, of China's current approach. Officials were talking about how if China were to sort of loosen restrictions, it would mean that a large number of elderly children, pregnant women, would get infected, and they were talking about how this caused large amounts of fatalities within quite a short period of time. And they also talked about how despite the very heavy-handed measures, that this approach was necessary because it helped to sort of preserve the ability for the rest of the country to carry on with their economic activity and so forth.
Well, the Commission also saying today, Danson, that almost 90% of China's total population is fully vaccinated. So then it brings about the question on most people's minds. Why then is China sticking to its dynamic zero-COVID strategy?
Well, I see two reasons for this. It's true, the vaccination rates here are quite high. But if you drill down deeper into the numbers, when it comes to people above the age of 80, for example, this number comes all the way down to just over 50% or so. So a large number of very old people are not vaccinated, and that's a big issue for China. There are some projections, that sort of estimate that China could face something like 2 million deaths if it does, sort of loosen its COVID-19 policies and restrictions. So China here is trying to balance the health of its most vulnerable parts of the population, the elderly, with ensuring that economic activity can go on, so to speak. But the second, I think, equally important reason is that it's also political. Chinese President Xi Jinping has sort of touted the ability of the Chinese system to battle COVID, to be able to tamp down infections. And in China here, it's often described that China has certain advantages in doing these things, managing to control infections, by doing mass tests and extensive contact tracing, because the government here is so big, and in some ways I think Mr. Xi has sort of tied his own personal legitimacy to the success of zero COVID, and this year is a particularly sensitive year for him because he is widely expected to seek a third term in power. So for that reason, I think China is not going to deviate from zero COVID at this point in time.
Two fair points that you just brought up, Danson, but if China continues with this dynamic zero COVID strategy, what repercussions will the country and the rest of Asia face?
Well, I think if you just look at what's happening in Shanghai, I think we can expect greater logistics delays. Shanghai is one of China's biggest shipping ports. So, and the lockdown there essentially has crippled the flow of goods into and outside of the country. I was speaking with a friend who imports beef into China, and he's told me that his frozen beef basically has been sitting in Shanghai for at the port, for over a month now. So there, going to be big repercussions here. I think, there's some figures that sort of show that container volume has dropped by about a third in Shanghai. So I think we can expect, in the rest of the world, logistics delays, and within China as well.
Many thanks to Danson Cheong, our China correspondent in Beijing. Well, the capital has closed more gyms, malls, cinemas and residential blocks. Its Chaoyang district, which accounts for the biggest share of cases in the current outbreak, is on its last of 3 rounds of testing today for its 3.5 million residents. And over in Shanghai, where nearly half of its population are now allowed to leave their homes following a lockdown imposed at the beginning of the month. These some 12 million residents live in lower risk areas that have gone 2 weeks without a positive case.